Hi there, this is a video about toolbar editing in Directory Opus, made in collaboration with Joe Glines. Joe runs a YouTube channel covering tools and techniques to help you use your PC better. A link to Joe's channel is in the description below, where you'll also find a previous video introducing Opus from scratch, which we made with John Lalonde, the author of Quick Access Pop-Up. We hope that this video format, combining discussion and demonstration, provides a good way to get videos to you more quickly. Let us know what you think, and if you have suggestions for future videos, please add them to the comments below.
Hello everyone, it's Joe Glines here from the Automator, and today I'm talking to Leo Davidson again from Directory Opus. And today we were talking, this got interesting because in our last call we talked a little bit about creating buttons, but we didn't get into it. And it was one of those pet peeves of mine at TI, or any corporate office, where I've worked, I'd see people that let's say use Excel almost all day, right? That's all they do. And yet when they would go to do a functionality, they would have to go hunt through the stupid ribbon, and click like 5 or 6 times to find what they want to do. And it was just, I'm like, just create a button, and just, it takes you like 10 seconds, create a button. Like I had a button to freeze paintings. I had a button to dedupe. I had a button, for everything you do. It's so simple. So anyway, that was what I had asked Leo in the call last time, I think, can you create them? And you said yes, but that wasn't the purpose of the video, so we didn't go into that. But yeah, you're going to show me today, right?
Yes, that's the plan. Just show that in more detail. So I'm going to show a bit of sort of the basics of how you can get into the toolbar editing, like how you actually edit a button. And I just want to show a few different types of buttons because there's very simple ones and it gets more complex. And I'm not going to go into the sort of nitty-gritty details, but I'll show what can be done, and cool. People can then dig into it further, or maybe if people want, we can do another video that goes more into things. Yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. So you want to go ahead and share your screen, and we'll start having some fun?
So the first thing I'm going to do before I start editing things, I'm going to back up my config, just as it's just a good idea anyway.
Tip. Absolutely. Yeah.
If you mess something up, you've always got the backup. And I'm also going to use this backup later. So I'm just going to do start video.
It's actually a great point of, even if you're just not sure you want to do it, this is a way to test it, right? You can do all the stuff, do whatever you want. You know what? I don't like it. I'm just going to revert to that earlier version.
Yeah, exactly. Did that through sort of settings, backup and restore. You can also, all the config files, if you type in, I should probably explain what I'm doing here. If you type / you get a list of aliases on the screen.
Cool.
And these are, you can add your own, but there's a load of built-in ones. If you do DOpus data, that's your main config folder, and we try and keep all the config in files. There's 1 or 2 things that will go into the registry unless you're on a USB or whatever. But this means you can also just go in here and
copy
the folder. There are some other settings in other folders, but they're less important, like recent directories and things like that. Stuff you wouldn't need to back up, and at least not normally. Right, so I've done that. Yeah, the first thing I want to do, because this is something that. The one thing that I don't like about our default config is there's no button to go straight to the desktop. I've got the tree on here, so I can click that. But I would myself normally I run with the tree turned off, and I want to get to you're in a random folder, and I want to get to the desktop quickly all the time. That's that's where I keep my stuff I'm working on. And there are various ways that you can click on there and desktop, but it's a little bit fiddly. So I like to just put a button here. You can add a favorite as well. There's so many ways you can go to a folder. But it's I'm going too quickly here. So one way you can customize the toolbars, if you right click on just an empty space on one of the toolbars, and you can click customize there, that'll open up the editor. You can also go settings, customize toolbars, whichever's easier for you. Yep. So I'm just going to right click on I want to put it onto this file display toolbar. And this toolbar is special because if you open up a dual display, you'll get a second copy of it.
Gotcha.
And all the buttons will only work on that side. So buttons up here on the normal toolbars, you click those and they would go onto whichever side is source, the active side. Buttons over here, you don't have to worry about which one's source and which one's destination. Right. I'll just close that again because it just confuses things. So I'm going to I'll right click on this empty space and do new button. You can create other things, menus and things, but we won't go into that yet. And I want to put it up here. I'm going to right click it. And this is only one way you can do it. I'm just going to do go past desktop. The desktop's another alias that goes to your desktop folder. You don't have to worry about usernames and that kind of thing. So if you copy this configuration to another machine, it'll work even if the username's different. I'll just give it a nice icon. So this is our built-in icon set. You can use external icons as well, and these are all sort of tagged with the name, so you can filter and find the desktop one nice and easy. So now I've got this button here. If I'm in whatever folder I'm in, I can just click that straight away, get back to there. You can also, if you're in customize mode, you can also just drag a folder onto
oh man, yeah, and then go back and change the icon because which is the other thing. It's so simple, right? But people don't change that icon picture. And
I have seen configs where people have got no labels on this, like 50 identical icons, and I'm thinking, how do you know which one's which?
You got to mouse over, wait for it to show something.
It's I mean, in this case, I just add a label. I don't want to keep that there, so let's get rid of that. The other thing you can do is you can add a program in a similar way. Program files. Program files x6. Yeah. So if you wanted a button to run a program, I think John may have shown this in the previous one, but just for completeness, I'm going to stick this up. I don't know. I'll stick it there for now. So this opens a thing asking you how you want to run the program, because different programs work in slightly different ways, or I mean, some programs you might want to send the selected files to them, some you might not. The defaults are probably, you wouldn't want to send a folder to this, I don't think. But and you can test it out in this dialog as well. But I'm just going to accept that, and hopefully it'll work. So I've got this Notepad++ button. If I then run it on select the file and run that, oh no, it's opened the wrong file. What's happened there? Let's have a look at it. That should work. What's going on here? Oh, sorry, I'm confused. It had a.
Oh, right.
Unless Notepad++ doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so it didn't activate the tab for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never actually used Notepad++ before. It's just a convenient thing to install. It must need some extra arguments to tell it what to open. If I change that to Notepad, it should work. It always goes wrong in the demo, doesn't it?
Right. Yeah, of course. Look how simple this is, and then
that should.
Things go wrong.
I'm not sure why that's not working.
It's one of the things that I get critiqued a lot. I have some Udemy courses, and I get critiqued a lot because I'll leave stuff like this in my course because I'm like, look, you got to learn how to troubleshoot. And it happens to everybody, and anyone who thinks it doesn't is crazy.
Exactly. I go through this quite often. So here's an example. I wasn't planning to do this, but here's an example of how a quick way of seeing what's going on. So I've changed it to
cool.
Which means it's going to run in the command prompts. And
great. Yeah, we can see it.
And instead of running the command, it's going to echo
it. Yeah. So we can see the commands that are actually sent.
Yeah. So let's see what I'm doing. That's weird. Why is that not working?
It's not passing the parameter for whatever reason. Looks like.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Oh, okay. It was the there's only thing. Oh, I meant to pick files only, and I picked directories only, so it was filtering out.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to delete this button, and I'll start again.
So we've showed the wrong way to do this.
Yeah. I'll add Notepad++. Yeah, and I'll check files only instead of files.
Okay, cool.
So they both start with F. It's an easy mistake. So now if I run that, it should. Yeah, there we go. It's opened up the file that I had selected. And I think if nothing's selected, it will still run it. And it's remembering that was open before, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that's optional. You can change that code. I won't go into this in too much detail, but if you put a $sign there, it means if it's just on its own, it means you want a file, but if there isn't one, it will just put nothing there at all. If you put a $sign there, it means it needs a file. And if there isn't a file selected, it won't run anything. You don't have to remember all this. It's all in the menus here. So you have to remember what the difference between want and need is, but you don't have to remember all the
I understand. Right.
It's all put there for you. So it's a bit longer than I expected.
Yeah, no worries.
We've learned how to fix that. Yeah, and another really convenient thing. So you'll probably be iterating through. You'll put a button on there. You'll test it. It won't work quite right. You want to edit it again, and it's quite a hassle to go customize, blah blah blah, click on all these things. So there's an option in here. Should find it, I think. Yeah, that was on already. I must have turned it on alias. Don't think it's on by default. But yeah, Alt click to edit toolbar button. So if that is on, I'm holding down the Alt key and I'm clicking on the button, and it goes straight into the editor.
Oh, so that's awesome.
Quickly make some changes, click OK. And you can also run things in the editor. So if I select a file and click run, you can test the command that way.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So yeah, lots of different ways to do it. One hint about that, if you're doing that, you probably want to put in no deselect. Where's it gone? I'll just type it in.
No deselect. Is that what you said? I saw it over there. Yeah.
Deselect. So that'll make it so when you run the thing, the file will stay selected. It's a bit hard to see in my color scheme, but it's still selected there. Otherwise, every time you run it, you have to go back and forth and select the file again. Yeah, so we've looked at the sort of top level.
So one stupid use of this is, let's say, like a CSV file, that sometimes you want to open it in Notepad or Notepad++, and sometimes you want to open it in Excel, right? This is a great, easy way to say, hey, I have an easy way to have an alternative to what the default is. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be the default. And in fact, you can drag the file itself onto the toolbar, and clicking that button would be like double clicking the file. So it would then
it's a quick launch to it.
It's an easy way to. So like if you had a hex editor or something like that, if you want to expect things at the binary level, it's a nice thing to have. Definitely, yeah. So we've looked at buttons on the top level, but everything in the all of the menus as well are the same thing. So I can edit any of these like that. That's just a button that does that.
Is there an easy way to take one of those items from your menu and bring that up to the, actually drag it to the toolbar, or do you have to go reconstruct it? Okay.
Yeah, so if you say you wanted like the preferences button, just hold down Control, drag it across.
I figured there would be, that's awesome. Because that's, you guys know what you're doing. You've created menu items of the most commonly used things, and this is where it's like, hey, if I'm using it that much, put it on that front thing that I don't have to go search for it. So awesome.
and I do that sort of temporarily sometimes. Like if I find there'll be one day where I keep going like menu item, I'll just copy that up to here, and then when I'm finished, delete it, because you might not need it again after that day, but it'll certainly save you a lot of time.
It's actually one of the things.
You can move things as well, obviously.
Cool.
Okay. You can also copy and paste.
Nice.
But yeah, the Control drag is the easiest, at least for me. But yeah, copy and paste.
What was that 3 buttons option? I'm just curious. It sounds weird.
3 buttons is we've gotten rid of most of the default ones because it's not very discoverable, but it is quite useful. So you can have like I'll look at this button. It opens the viewer. So this toggles the viewer pane. Another thing I'd say, if you hold down Shift while you're editing things, you click on them, they don't run the command. If you hold down Shift, they'll still run it. So this opens up the viewer pane, which displays the selected files. If I turn that into a 3 button, that's not letting me. Why is that? Oh, because I'm editing it, I think. Yeah. So I've turned that into a 3 button. You get this when you're in customize mode. You get this sort of menu here, and what this means is you can actually have
neat
things in there. And that's awesome. This is the left click. That's the right. Or left, right, and middle click. So now I've got a button where it does one thing. If I click the right thing, it does another.
That's brilliant, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, it's useful. It's useful for things that you make yourself because it's there. You
right,
there.
Right. Which is why I'm so excited. Yeah, because I'm so used to that. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's very powerful because it means you've got much less stuff And you can also
Right.
put sort of related things there. Like I don't know
Right.
if it's,
Yeah.
these things open and dual file displays, and sometimes I can't remember what it was, but on one of my, for a while anyway, I didn't use it much in the end, but I had a sort of an alternative way to open a dual file display, maybe giving it I can't remember what it was, but it was like two related commands. I was like, the left click does the normal action, the right click does a slightly different one.
Yeah, I teach in auto hotkey. I teach people to use the basic are like hotkeys and hot strings, and then people, they don't understand. I'm like, I have hundreds of them, and the only way I can do that is by establishing patterns. Kind of because otherwise it's so hard. There's so many, but I'll create a pattern of like, oh, email will be your initials and an E for your, and it's like, oh, okay, but that's the same concept of like one button that's related, make it related in some way. It makes it so much easier to remember. The thing is, it'll work. It's just, can you remember it? And if you can't remember it, it's defeated the purpose. Yeah. Yeah,
because you can create so much sort of cool stuff that this will save me so much time, and then you forget it's even there sometimes. So it is important to make it.
Yeah, I've gone in and said, oh, you know what? I should automate this. Let me write a script. So I write the script and I go to save it, and because I'm very particular and where I save stuff, I'll go to save it and I'm like, oh, I'll save it here, and I'll look and there's the damn thing I had already written the same thing before, just forgot I had
before,
yeah, I'm like, oh god. Anyway.
Yeah, that happens. It's like, that was a good idea, and it seems familiar. Oh, there it is. It's already
right. And I even did a better job last time. No, anyway. No. Yeah, that's very powerful.
I mean, I guess speaking of hotkeys, I'll go into that. So each of these buttons can have a hotkey. Like if you wanted.
Oh, that's excellent.
Try and pick one. There's already a hotkey for this. So the buttons up here are duplicates of things in here. So. Because you can't really, you don't know what all these icons mean initially, so you can look in here, and it's a bit more verbose. I mean, you can hover over it and it'll tell you, but we like to provide it like an easy way to sort of digest what there is, and then here are the commonly used stuff which you can then edit. Because this command is in two places, we put the hotkey in this one, so there's an F7 hotkey on there. But you can change that, and you can add, you can have multiple hotkeys for the same thing as well. So
excellent. That's awesome.
It's mainly used for things like the location field. There's a few different standards, like some programs use Control L, some use F4, some use Alt D. So we put them all there by default. So whatever you're used to, hopefully you'll be able to do it, sort of thing.
I'll tell you, my use case, and it's probably different than what you're thinking, is I often have other people using my computer, and I assign a hotkey for what makes sense to me, but then they have a different one that they're used to. So being able to have more than one is really, that's very helpful for them.
Yeah, it is handy. And you can also, let me see if I can remember how this works because I don't use it much, but you can have hotkey chords, which sounds like what you were saying before. So if you, like say you wanted this to be, I don't know, Control, I'm trying to pick something that won't already be taken.
Right.
You can do Control P and then add the sequence. I think, so Control P Q, say, that will mean that if I'm not going to try and work one out.
I understand.
But that will mean that to trigger that, you do Control P and then separately Q. So you can have multi-level type thing.
Yeah, I've seen that in Visual Studio, and I'm like, what the holy hell were these people thinking? But they have like over 1,000 hotkeys or something, and so that's why I realized that's why they had to do that. But
I mean, there's only one in Visual Studio I use, which is the collapse and expand thing, and that is, I can't remember what it is. If I was using it, it's sort of muscle memory, but I think it's something like Control M P or something. I don't know. But that's and that sort of makes sense because it's like I want to do this thing and I want to collapse, or I want to do this thing and I want to expand. So it's like thing and then action. But to be honest, I never use it in Opus.
Well, that's what I was going to say was, look, here's the thing. If I'm using it enough, I'm going to assign a different hotkey to it because I can't remember that. So I think the problem is they want to have a hotkey for everything built in, and that's why they went that route. But anyway,
I think maybe it would make sense if you had like I want to send an email to this person sort of thing. So like you've got.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. Again, with the pattern.
Email,
yeah. Right. Right.
Maybe not a good example in a file manager. You can send emails in Opus, but it's not very good at it sort of thing because it's not an email program. It's pretty simple. But that kind of thing, like say you'd be one hotkey to send email.
Well, let's say
you'd probably rather have press the hotkey and then get a menu of people which you can then select from. So I don't know. It's not something I would use.
Well, you might even have, a certain folder that you keep for backups of some specific thing. And so anytime I select this file and I hit this hotkey, it's going to send it to that folder, and have different letters to represent different folders. Maybe it counts, like for the type of things you're working. Anyway,
I guess. Because I guess the good thing is that it means you've only got to find one hotkey that isn't in use, and then you've got the whole keyboard to specify the secondary level. But as I say, it's not something I personally use. But there's loads of stuff in Opus I don't use. It's there for whatever people want, sort of thing. So continue on hotkeys. So we've shown that they can be assigned to the buttons, but they can also be standalone. So you can have buttons that don't have any hotkeys that don't have any button attached to them. Like F2 is the key to start doing in line rename. You can change that if you want. And this list separates. So the hotkeys are all the standalone ones. Toolbars are all the ones that are on buttons up there, and you can click on here and click the little glasses, and it will locate that hotkey command in the toolbar for you. And there's also
I'm sorry. Back up on that. Say that again.
So the hotkeys category, these are standalone. So these are hotkeys that the only place you'd find them is here.
Okay.
They don't have any toolbar button associated with them. It's usually things that wouldn't make sense to click on because if you're using the mouse, you do it in a different way. But if you're using the keyboard, you'd want a command for it. And then there's the toolbar section. So this is all the hotkeys from your toolbars that are active, that are open. You can also have a toolbar where you say keep the hotkeys for this toolbar active, but don't show it. Because we found a lot of people would hide this toolbar, the main one. And this is the one where all the copy and paste commands are defined. So people would turn that off thinking, I never use this. And then we'd get support.
That would be me.
Saying, I can't copy and paste
that would have been me. I remove, like in the context menu, I'm like, cut, copy, paste. I'm like, I always use the keyboard. I would never use a mouse for that,
Yeah, I mean, it's not obvious because you think, I never use this, so I'll delete it. But then this is actually where that hotkey comes from.
Interesting. But one thing I got confused on, though, because I thought you said you could click down below and it would show you up above. That was where I was like, wait.
So, for example, I'll find you can also filter down here. So if you want to find out what's on Control K, you can do that. This is a bit confusing. We're going to improve this, but you can, when this is on, you type a hotkey and it will show you the keys. And you can just do Control, and it's all the keys that involve Control.
Just to clarify, because I don't know what you're hitting. You're literally hitting Control K down there, right? Yes. You're not typing that. That's one of the things that I've seen some where you have to type it, and I'm like, how did they type Control? I don't know if they spelled it. Anyway.
So in this mode, I'm literally just like if I push Shift, it will show me all the keys involving the Shift key.
Awesome, good.
And if I do Shift F8, it'll just filter on that. But if you turn this off, you can also filter on these other columns. So if you want to say,
oh, cool, okay,
to go up, it'll find the thing for that. And it's a bit confusing because it's not too clear. It's that mode. We're going to change that, and I think we're going to have separate fields eventually. Because there's plenty of space down there.
Right.
So the thing we were talking about before, so if I want to, so Control K calculates folder sizes. It gives you the size of all your folders. That's in the edit menu, but if say you didn't know where that was coming from, because sometimes you've got all these hotkeys like, where I don't remember that button being anywhere. So you can just select it and click on this glasses icon, locate toolbar, and it will.
Oh, cool! That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
because this is one of those things, and I don't know whoever wrote this realized like that right there will actually get people to remember it. Because otherwise, like Control K, but watching this, like I could see how that would suddenly go, oh, there it is. All right, I get it. Yeah, that's awesome.
And you might find a command here you think that's useful, but I'll never remember the hotkey. But so where else can I get it? And it's like, okay, it's edit. And, you remember it that way, maybe. Depending on who you are. I guess while I'm here, you can also edit the context menus. So it's like if I right-click on the background, you get this menu. Or if I right-click on here, you get this menu. And those are all editable here. So like the column header, I never use the attributes column. I never care about that. I never care about the access time. So that, clean that up. These are just your sort of quick things, so you can.
Again, it's kind of like I said earlier. I customize mine a lot, and most people don't ever even bother. And then they get mad when something's not there. And I'm like, freaking put it in there. Yeah. Or like you said, there's 8 million things in there that I never use. Get rid of them. Clear up the clutter. Or, possibly if you can't assign an icon, which is also when that's, I don't know if I think I saw in some other ones. Did you have icons in some of them and not others?
Yeah, yeah, you can add icons, all of these.
Okay.
I used to go in and do that, and I stopped. It was just so much hassle.
It takes a little time.
Things up a bit.
Yeah, but for your most frequently used ones, it really helps, because then you just stop reading and you can jump to it, so quickly.
I guess another thing you can do is you can color things. So,
cool. Okay.
So say
that alone.
Say you use that a lot, you can set the colors here. So.
Nice. Oh, that alone would be, I can change the big ones that I use very frequently.
Yeah, so you can sort of highlight that. I guess probably worth mentioning. So if you mess up your toolbars, you can factory reset if you're editing one of the factory toolbars, you can just reset it, and that will get you back to the defaults.
So the more important question is, how do we get you guys to fix all the Office programs to have these options? Because
some things we can't do.
Because man, it drives me nuts, all the stuff that I used to love Excel. It was a great program, and then they make to me these asinine choices, and now I almost hate it. There's so many things I don't like about it. But anyway,
they seem to be moving away from the ribbon themselves, because I think
I read that. Yeah,
Windows 11 doesn't have a ribbon anymore, does it? It's just a fairly traditional toolbar again. So
which I'm all over. I mean, I used the classic shell. I think that's what it's called, for getting the old style, toolbars for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm until they allowed you, because at first when the ribbon came out, you couldn't customize it at all, right? And that drove me batty. And then they gave you the little toolbar, thing you can customize. Then they allowed you to customize the ribbon, which thank God. But yeah. And then they got rid of it. Yeah.
They give things and then they take it away. They can't make up their minds what they're doing. We've been asked to do ribbons, and you can do something like a ribbon here, because you can have commands that will turn on and off toolbars. And it's not on here, but in my normal setup, I've got a control and then the top left key next to 1, depends what locale you're in. But that's it's an easy to press thing, but nothing else uses it, and that will toggle on this toolbar down the side. I've just got a load of test buttons. Like here's my test script that I can mess around with. Here's a button that does 1 or 2 things that I keep having to go back to and tweak slightly to test different things. So you could have like a menu at the top that turned on one toolbar and turned off all the others if you wanted. To act sort of like a ribbon, but people ask for it, and then we say, well, you can do it, and then they don't want it enough to do it. It's like, did you really want that then? I'm not sure.
Well, and it's one of those things to me that I thought I actually owned IHateTheRibbon.com for a while, because it drove me nuts. But I realized the concept is sound. It's basically a context menu, for your buttons, right? I mean, it's for your menus. But the problem was, whoever thought up the things that got put in there and the order of them was not, they went overboard, and we can only have this one item in this one place, and and it was just, it really messed with everything I did.
Because you're always flicking between. It's nice to say, if you're doing a lot of renames, like in Opus, if we got got the fancy rename dialog, but you can have presets that you've defined, and you can go in here and if you're doing like 50 of those in a row, it might be a hassle to keep opening that up, and maybe you'd want to. But you could just put that on the toolbar. You can literally put this list on a toolbar, stick it on the side, and turn it on when you want it, and then turn it off when you don't.
And even then, you could, at least for some of them, you could put in the 3 buttons, right? And
you can put them wherever you want. And why if you're doing the renaming, why would you want to hide all the other stuff? When you're doing that, it shouldn't be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Or I have to go to a certain view to see that rename. I mean, that's
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, but there are. I think it's nice. It's sort of nice. It's one of those things that's like, it's nice. It makes certain easy things a bit easier, but it makes anything complex even harder. And there's a lot of things like that. And I'm not a fan, sort of thing. Like if I'm not against making easy things easier. Make everything easier as easy as you can. But it shouldn't then get in the way of doing more complex stuff.
Well, and here's the interesting part, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this. I think in general, Microsoft's beliefs and the world's belief kind of is like, people, I'm not going to say getting dumber, but they're getting less and less, knowledgeable of how to use a computer.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole, really, if you think about it, Android versus iPhone. iPhone decides how they're going to make the perfect phone for you, and you can't really customize it, versus Android's like, screw it. You figure, do what you want.
Yeah. And if you want exactly what what iOS gives you, it's fantastic. But if you want something slightly different, you're out of luck. Yeah. You can't, you've got no choice, sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, it probably is great for the majority of people. I mean, there's more and more people using computers, and that obviously means there's fewer and fewer percentage are very technical. But there's still a hell of a lot of technical people, and they're not being served very well by most of these companies, because they're just focusing on the biggest group of people who are the non-technical people.
I tell when I would start a new job, I would tell them, look, I need a day to configure my computer. And they're thinking, I'm like, no, I customize it so much. It takes me like a day to get it set up. But then when I'm good to go, I'm so much more efficient than other people, because it's actually optimized for me, but And now for the rest of the time I'm working for them, I'm more efficient. It's like you lose a day. Like, trust me, it's worth it.
And it's sort of a nice, like some of the things you can configure in Opus, they might not really involve Opus. You're just pressing a hotkey and it runs some other program. But the nice thing is that you can then export that config, load it into another machine, and you've got your setup there.
Cool.
So obviously you've got to install Opus. That's one tool, but you don't necessarily have to install a separate hotkey tool. Although you might still want to. Every tool has its own little niche.
So help me understand that now, actually, because I don't think this is what you were saying, but you would, when you export, you would be exporting all of your settings. Is that correct? You're not exporting.
Yeah, well, you can choose to a degree. Like you can do backup. You can choose like images, sound, miscellaneous. I think it will always include all your toolbars. But you can also just copy the tool, like I was showing before. If you go to DOpus data, and then there's a buttons folder, and all your toolbars are these files.
Oh, okay. All right.
And if you really wanted to, I mean, they're just XML, so And we don't recommend you edit them, because if you make a mistake, then it's not going to load. But
you got to know what you're doing. Yeah.
And sometimes it's good, because if you want to search and replace on a path, you can avoid hard coding paths by using those aliases, because you can add your own alias. But if you didn't think to do that, you might have 50 different config files all referencing like folder X, and you now need it to be folder Y. You could just do a search and replace across all the text files. So it can be useful. And again, that's reminded me about the hotkeys, because we were talking about sort of separate hotkey programs. So you can have these system-wide ones, and this means as long as Opus is running, you can push this hotkey in any program. The only default one is Win-Shift-E. So, like say I'm in Notepad++. If I do, so I'm holding down Windows, Shift and E, that will open an Opus window. But you can make that do anything. So it wouldn't even have to run Opus. You could have a hotkey anywhere that would open, Notepad++ or.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, because when I first installed, like I said, I used it like 20 years ago, or roughly somewhere there, and then I just started using it again. After I installed it, I thought, even though I didn't tell it to run every time when Windows started, there was still some sort of a service or something that looked like it was now there.
Yeah, but it'll run in the background by default. You can turn that off under launching Opus startup. Yeah, so that is on by default. It's there for two reasons. One is it just makes it so you can just instantly, like I've got the desktop double click on, you can just instantly open a window. And if I quit the program, it's not slow, but it takes a second or two, which is a bit slower than just double clicking to. Well, but the other reason is for those system-wide hotkeys. So because they only work while it's running. Yeah, it's up to you. If you don't want it until you're actually using it, you can turn that off. There's also an option to close the program when the window closes. So you can see down here there's a tree icon. If I turn that on, that should go away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this may show just how old I am, but when IE, if I remember this right, man, it was so long ago. IE first came out. it was competing against Netscape mainly, and they were showing how fast IE was. And it was really because they were preloading it. Microsoft built it in, and it's like, oh, look how fast it opens. Like it's because you launch it at startup.
Yeah,
it's just hidden.
But I think it makes sense for some programs, but it's up to the user. I mean, it depends if you don't. Because for me, I'm constantly opening and closing.
I'm in Explorer all the time. But
other people, they'll open it and they'll keep that one window, and I mean, you can open lots of tabs. Some people have got all the windows open in tabs, and they've only ever got one window open, and it stays open. I'm not like that. I use tabs a little bit, but not all the time.
But the dual display, that's being able to display more than one folder. And I love, actually, because after I was playing with it this morning, and that you can choose whether it's a horizontal or vertical, and I'm like, until I clicked it and I saw it, I'm like, oh, now that I will leave up all the time. Like, I don't know why for me, I didn't want them side by side, but this way is like, to me, absolutely. I'd love to have a second one there.
And you can also have so by default, the tree is shared. So you've got one tree and, that's down there.
Oh, okay.
But you can have a separate tree for each side if you want. It's up to you.
Now, now you can adjust it with Explorer. There's a setting you can change, but as you navigate inside Opus in a file folder, the tree is updated. Is that right by default?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, by default you can, but if you click on this lock, it will no longer follow you. So
that's the default for Explorer, and I'm like, I don't understand who would,
what's the point?
I find it so confusing when it's not updated.
I mean, I think their idea is that the tree is just the starting point, and you'd select somewhere and then drill down from there, but not want it to change. And I don't. Yeah, that's something, because we've got a favorites menu here. If you want, I mean, I haven't added any favorites, but if I want to jump to a place, I think that's a lot more logical than having.
Agreed.
Making the tree for it, or you can also. I mean, we've seen you can put folder icons there, or you can have a toolbar on the side. Quickly demo that. I should turn on the drives one. So you could have a toolbar.
Where's the where are the broken drives?
As fixed, the fixed drives are like hard drive, or I think it's just hard drives, yeah.
Okay.
And the others are like optical and floppy drives a long time ago.
Well, you'll laugh, but if you looked at my computer, you'll see I have a B drive, and it's basically because I use Dropbox so much, I created a drive that looks like, but it's really my Dropbox drive, and that way it's just everything is under it. But
yeah. I did have a floppy until about 5 years ago. And the only reason I had it was to find bugs in Opus that involved because floppies are weird. You access them and they click. So if any other device you say, is there anything there?
Right.
Nothing happens. You access a floppy and it goes click. And we used to have this bug where every so often you'd be running Opus and it would go, the PC would go click, click, click. So I've always, until recently, and it's just irrelevant now because nobody has a floppy, but until recently I still kept one in my machine just to.
I have a portable one that I could plug in. My wife was when we moved the other day. I saw it. My wife's like, "What is that for?" And I'm like, "Just in case, yeah."
The drives thing is nice because it will. So you can have this list of drive buttons, anywhere you want. This is a virtual machine, so it's only got one drive, but it'll automatically add. So if I plugged in a USB stick, you get an icon for that up here, and you could click straight to it. But I mean, you can go into this PC or whatever and do the same thing, but it's just a bit more convenient if you do that a lot. Yeah, close that window and open a fresh one.
You know what? Let me quickly share my desktop. Mm-hmm. I want to show you. I don't know if we did this before, but let me explain what I do on mine. I think you'll appreciate this. So. Sure. I've done this for like 20 years, right? I have my taskbar, vertical. Up here, these are shortcuts to launching programs. But down here, these are all folders. And which we were saying earlier is I have, I assign an icon to a given folder, right? So these are the folders I'm in all the time, and it's so easy to add them, right? But it's super helpful to have them, Yeah, they're right there,
Yeah.
and it's
Because you get that muscle memory.
Yeah.
If you think, I want this folder, it's there. It's there. You don't have to open a menu. You don't have to do anything. It's right there. Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Cool. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share on?
Yeah. I've got a few more things if we have time.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I have to share my screen again.
Yes, you do. Sorry.
Yeah, that's no problem. So yeah, let me quickly. So we've seen this simple button up here, which just runs sort of one internal command, and we've seen ones that run external things. You can also do a little bit of, so there's simple scripting and there's complex scripting. So like an example here is the copy files button. So we've got this key down thing that's saying if no key is held down when you click the button, it will just run copy, which copies things from the source to the destination side, left to right. If you hold down shift, it'll do copy as. So I'll quickly, here we're not. So I'm holding the shift key down, clicking copy, and it's going to ask me what name I want for that file. So I can rename it as I'm copying it. It doesn't really make sense here, but if you had multiple files selected, you could say.
Okay. Right.
We'll do that. Yeah. So that's. Oh yeah. There's also. So the rename button. If I click this, it opens the sort of the advanced rename dialog, and this is the one we think most people will probably want to use. If you're doing a simple rename, you just do it straight in here. But there is a simple. You can click on that, and you can do a simple rename, which is a bit like that dialog we were just. And this is actually implemented in here. So this command, there are variables in Opus. They're fairly simple. It's not like a full scripting language. Well, you can do full scripting as well. There's a sort of on top of that, or simplified, I guess you could say. So this is saying if the variable, this defines when the button is selected. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the meat of it is saying if the variable is already set, then clear it. Otherwise, set it. And then the rename button checks that variable. If it's set, it'll run rename simple, and if it's not set, it'll run rename advanced.
Okay.
So you can have buttons that will change the state of what other things do. And then I should also say these commands, you don't have to remember all of this, all the arguments.
Yeah, I figured.
Which helps quite a lot. Otherwise, you'd have to be constantly going into the manual. I mean, even I can't remember all of those things. So I remember a few of them, but not.
And I don't know, this may be a big ask, but what I've done in tools where it's really like with my texting, and I have variables that are available, is as you're typing, it'll offer them up in a list. And it's very helpful to, then I don't even have to go look for it, right?
We don't have that yet, but we are thinking about it. It's kind of, it's not trivial, but it is a good idea.
I totally understand. Yeah,
it is.
Because I didn't even do it. My employee did it for me, and I'm like, holy hell! And he's like, yeah, it took me a little while to figure that one out. But
but it is so useful because you don't have to go from the mouse to the keyboard. You just type things, and definitely. I mean, it's similar to the command completion, like that kind of thing. It's just so much easier.
Yeah. Keeps you in your environment. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'll touch on. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll touch on scripting a little bit. So that was we did what I just showed. We don't call scripting, although maybe technically it is. It's got if then else statements. Is that scripting? We don't call it scripting because we've got something else we call scripting. I guess I'd say.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So I'll make a new button. Click into advanced mode, which gives you in simple mode. It's for people who maybe they're not as advanced, I guess. That's the best way of putting it. So I think simple mode is sort of one line commands.
It's the Forrest Gump, version. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost the same. But if you set the start into a folder and then click on advanced, it will convert that into the actual command that does that for you.
Okay.
But yeah, that's sort of beside the point. So if I set it to script mode, there's also WSL for the Windows Linux stuff. I'm not going to go into that because I haven't really used it much and I don't have it installed. But if I do a script button, that'll load up this default script. And we're in VB scripts, I'll switch it to JScript. The default script we've provided, you can overwrite this, you can delete it, you can save your own, so you can put in your whatever. If you commonly use some snippets, or if you want to add some notes about stuff that you keep forgetting, you can stick them in here and then save over it.
Cool.
So every time you create a new button, you'll get this. So this one by default, if I click on some folders and run it, it'll sort of tell you what's selected, and it'll sort of demonstrate how to do a directory listing and a few other things. Yeah, you can, I mean, obviously you can just delete all of this and do what you want. So that's a script directly inside of a button, which is great if that button, or it can also be in a hotkey, but it's great if you only want to run that from one place in one way. But sometimes you might want to have something that you run in lots of different ways. And to do that, you can have a script add-in. What's the best way to demonstrate it? Yeah, so there's two ways. So this is a simple script add-in, which is just a JavaScript file. And this one is actually a script package, and it's really a zip file. You can go inside there, and there's a script, and there's some icons. So the reason it's a package is so that it can provide these icons. No other reason. It's not to hide anything, because you can just rename it .zip. There's a couple of ways you can install these. Go into Toolbar scripts, and just drag it on there. That will install it. You can also go to scripts and just drop the file in the folder, and that will work as well. So one of these scripts is this Beyond Compare one, and I think I talked about this last time. It's like I showed before. You can have a simple button that runs a command, an external program on a selected file. But sometimes it's more complicated than that. Like if you want to run a comparison tool, a different tool, you need it to run on something on the left and something on the right, and you can do that with we do have command arguments to say left file, right file. But sometimes, like with this, well, it's probably easier if I just show you.
Yeah, right. Sometimes it really is, yeah.
So this is a button that runs that command. It's going to make it, let's give it a large icon as well, make it nice and big. Stick it over here. So okay, so let me do another config backup, because this will demonstrate. This will give us something that we can compare. Let's go into my documents, yeah. So these config backups, again, they're really zip files. So if you ever need to dig into them, like if you don't want to just restore one thing, but you think, oh, I messed up this one toolbar, I have a backup. I don't want to restore all the other stuff because that will overwrite my other things. You can just rename these as .zip. I'm just going to extract that. Shouldn't put it there. Going to extract that to there. Yeah, so that's the backup I just made, and I'll take another backup that I made much earlier. Rename it.
Yeah, so you can piecemeal go through.
Yeah,
just the specific. Yeah,
just the bits that you want. But really, I just wanted a bunch of text files so I can compare really.
Right.
So if I've got nothing selected now, if I click on the compare button, it's going to run Beyond Compare against those two folders. So I can now drill down and say, okay, I changed this. That file's changed, I can see it.
Yeah, okay.
But if I go into, I'll turn on navigation lock as well, so that means if I go into a folder on the left, it goes into
cool.
folder on the right.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a file that's changed. So if I want to compare the drives file, I keep forgetting you can't see my hand, but I'm pointing at the drive. So if I want to compare this and this, with this button, there's a few different versions of this button that different people have posted on the forum. But with this version, if I just select the drives on the left and click there, it will automatically find the same file name on the right and compare against that. But if I wanted to, like say this was called drives.rar, so the files don't match. I can also select that.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Compare, and it will compare those two files.
Right.
So it's really versatile, and I use this all the time for checking code changes and that kind of thing. And the other thing you can do, so say the files were both in the same folder. If I selected two files here, click on there, it will compare those two. So the other side doesn't even have to be there now.
Well, I'm sorry. What is this compare is actually still Opus? Is that? No.
This is Beyond Compare. So this is a completely separate program.
I'm sorry. Okay, I saw the name of it, but I just thought it was the name of your script or something. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no. So this is a separate program.
Cool.
So Opus can compare two folders. Go into the other one of those. That's on the desktop, I think. Yeah. So Opus does have a sync tool. Yeah, synchronize. Right? Yeah. So that will tell us what's different on each side and offer to combine the two or to do a one-way update. But it doesn't have any kind of comparison tool, so there's no way to say, show me the differences between these two individual files, which like this. And I find Horses for Courses that the Opus Sync tool is great for simple stuff, but if you want to do a really complex, huge directory comparison, Beyond Compare is a better tool. I'm not afraid to admit that, because they focus on that. That's their one job, to compare folders and files. So there's no reason to, you're not if you're using Opus, you're not stuck using Opus. You can create a button that quickly launches some other command. The only other thing I wanted to mention, because we were touching on scripts, I also put in this max size column script, and this is a fairly it's fairly long-winded because it repeats itself because it does a lot of columns, but it's a fairly simple script that will it'll go through all the directories, and it will work out the maximum size of a file below that folder or the average size.
Interesting. Okay.
Scripts max size, the average size. So that is the average. I mean, it's useful for things like if you've got a bunch of different videos, but they're all in different bit rates. You can say, well, which ones are taking up the most space? You can turn this on and say, okay, this set of videos, they're taking up a lot more space on average than these other ones. And it's, I think it has a config. Yeah, so this you can have a configuration in the scripts as well. It's fairly simple. And this says ignore any file that's less than 5 megabytes, so it doesn't mess up the averages, and with lots of small sort of text files and things. Yeah, I mean the details of the scripts themselves are, we could speak for days about those. So I won't go too far into it. Yeah, I mean that was everything I planned to show. Hopefully that's
cool.
Made things a bit, fleshed them out a bit about what you can do.
Yeah, which is a lot,
yeah.
Which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. There's
a lot
highly,
to
highly customizable tool that.
Yeah.
I was looking at this and then I was going to say, it gets to a point where you think about it. Usually, I'm disappointed in the tool because I'm much smarter than the tool. You know what I mean? And here, at times, it's like, God, I got to level up to be able to use this tool. If you really want to take it to the tens, right? It's if you want to do X, you probably can, right? Is what it looks like.
Yeah, there's still some things that can't do. People get sort of offended when they think of an idea. I'm like, I thought Opus could do everything. Right. Why can't it do this? And I'm like, well, we haven't thought of everything, and not everything's been suggested, and not everything can be done. But there's a lot of. Our to-do list is like, we've got stuff we could be doing for the next 10 years.
Sure. Yeah.
Lots of good ideas, but there's only sort of 3 of us. So.
Well, and I have a podcast planned with my buddy to talk about what's better to should you be adding as much functionality as you can to your tools, and I think what really and actually like from this call with you, I'm thinking about going. I think there's just different types of tools. Some tools. Your audience wants to dig in there and learn every bit. And for those, you add everything you possibly can. And then there's other ones where you're like, no, I want the simplest thing. This isn't something they're going to be using forever and all this different stuff. Make it super simple and keep it clean. And
Yeah, because the more things you can change, the more you can mess them up as well. I mean, a lot of our support requests are, this has stopped working. I don't know why. What happened? And it turns out, they've gone in and they've changed the setting. They didn't know about it, and a week later, I can sort of understand why. Like things like Chrome, they hide away all the settings in that Chrome flags page. I mean, there are some in the UI, and I can sort of understand that. But we're not that kind of tool. We're going to give you a gun, and if you shoot your foot off with it, we'll try and help, sort of thing. But we're not gonna nerf that gun. We're gonna give you.
And here's the thing, and I don't know who it was strategically done, or just because, like you said, it's just good practice, is we started off with you backing up your settings, right? And that's, I think that's just a really, right. I don't do it so much anymore, but years ago, for years and years, for 20 years, anytime I would touch the registry, I would create a backup first. I'm like, what? It's just not worth it. Now I'm a little more risky. but not much. If I do anything big, I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it.
I used to have an incremental backup every night of my PC, so if anything went wrong, I could go back to that. But I still think it's a good idea. But the backup tools, every single time I choose a backup tool, and that one would become rubbish, and then another.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
I don't know why, but they.
Yeah.
I had pretty particular needs, so maybe it's me as well.
Well, I used to have what was it? I think it was Ghost is the program I used. But I would install my everything and then take a snapshot of it, and it was awesome because I could revert. But now I go years without reformatting my computer just because Windows has gotten much better, and most programs too. So
and I think we've also got more into. Like all my important stuff is in a cloud of some sort. Like the source code is in a version control server, so I could probably lose my. If I lost my PC, it would be a pain, but I wouldn't have lost any work, sort of thing.
Right. That's why I work from that B drive, and everything I do is even now. I even put my desktop under there, and so this is what was really cool. When I worked at TI, I had like 5 different computers. Yeah, I had like 5 different computers, but every desktop was the same because they were all under Dropbox.
Right, yeah.
And so I could go from, in all the toolbars I showed you earlier, well, actually the bottom ones were all the same. The top ones weren't because those were computer specific, right? But the bottom ones, all those folders, every folder under there is to Dropbox, under Dropbox. So everything was the same. Yeah, and it just saved me so much time and getting confused, but yeah, it saves a lot of time. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, the desktop's an important folder. It's where, at least for me, it's where if I'm working on something, it's on the desktop.
Right, and that was my problem. It's like I would save it to my desktop and then come home and I'm like, crap, I save it to my desktop at work. And this way, I get home and it's on my desktop, and I'm like, hey, it's there.
That folder, yeah, why not?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leo. This was fascinating. Really, Opus is such an amazing program, and I think I'm going to switch over to having it as my default browser. I mean, they're actually, and I saw it as a tool, but maybe you can help me real quickly. How would I assign like a hotkey to get the path to the selected file? Put that on the clipboard.
There is one by default, but you can obviously change it. Yeah, so in the edit menu, copy full path names, Control-Shift-C is the default hotkey, and that runs. And the basic command is that the UNC on the end is, if you're on a network share, it will convert it into the /
Oh my God, that is hilarious. I actually wrote a script that would do that because at work, my counterparts in like China and stuff, they had mapped out drive and it was different, and this was how I worked around it.
That's exactly where it came from, because it's not, if it's just you at home,
Right.
X colon, whatever, it's probably X colon on all your machines. But if you're in a big work environment, no one else is going to have that drive mapped, unless you all map the same things. And this command can do a bunch of other stuff. You can apply regular expression, search and replace on what you're sticking on the clipboard, and you can say, I just want the names, not the paths, or that kind of thing. But yeah, just go and edit, copy full path names, and just put whatever copy you want there. Yeah, because the other thing about the hotkeys is, so if you do choose one, like I've forgotten what it was already. I'll set that to Control K. If you choose one that conflicts, that will turn red, and the other one will go red. So you can.
Oh, interesting. It doesn't just overwrite it. Okay, that's good, I guess, because then it forces you to go and
go and fix it.
Yeah, and I take it neither one works while that happens.
I'm not sure which one it will choose. There's probably some priority rule, but I wouldn't depend on it.
Gotcha.
You can just turn it.
Like, that's awesome.
The toolbar ones.
That is
my toolbar. Just turn it off.
Right. That's great, because again, it might be something you want just temporarily, and you'll forget what it was in the other one. So this kind of gives you a history. Yeah.
And you can obviously just delete it as well.
Gotcha.
And I guess I should say so where it says the hotkey name in the actual menu, that isn't derived from here. It's part of the menu label, so you can just delete it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not automatic, because in some places, I think, I might be wrong, but I think sometimes we tell you what the hotkey is in the menu, but the actual key is coming from somewhere else.
Right.
Probably in the photo viewer, because that's got its own. This has its own toolbar at the top, and this is also editable. And a lot of these commands, well, I mean, this menu itself is optional, but you still want things like plus and minus to change the size. Those come from here, I think.
Okay.
And those, oh no, it is defined there. I don't know. They're probably somewhere where it's on the menu, but it's not actually defined there.
Right, I gotcha.
No, they're two separate things.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was very cool. I think a lot of people, again, this is, I think people way underestimate how much time they actually spend in, a file explorer or something, looking at files on a computer. And if we spend so much time in it, why not have a tool that actually does so much more for you and makes it work the way you want it to work, right? That's the thing, is you can customize it like crazy. So
I think it is quite a neglected thing because people they're just so used to clicking so much, click. Why not just have a button that takes you straight there?
And we live in the now, like, I don't have time. I need to get it done now, and I don't have time to make a button. You're like, you don't have a minute to make a button you're going to use for the next 5 years. It's just take a little time to slow down so you're faster, on everything else. I actually own, I think it's workhardernotsmarter.com. I haven't done anything with it, but I'm like, that's my motto. Or sorry, work smarter, not harder. Yeah.
Yeah. There's obviously trade-offs. Sometimes you make things that you don't use, but yeah, it will save you a lot of time. And I get so frustrated. If I'm on another machine, like a new PC or one that's not going to, one that's just going to be playing video or something, I still install Opus on it straight away because I just get so annoyed.
Sure.
Just trying to install the other software on there. It's like, I'm so sick.
You're going to need it at some point. Well, and that was actually, which I appreciate you showing me the whole backup stuff, because then when you do have, you configure it the way you want it, and then basically you can port that to other computers, right, very easily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you may want to change one or two bits, and that's where it's nice that everything is a file, so you can export your whole config, and then you have maybe one or two files that you replace. Yeah, that
you don't keep shared, synced. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and you have that granularity, and even within the files, it's mostly XML. I think there's one or two binary files, but it's fairly peculiar stuff that you wouldn't want to edit anyway. So you can go in there and search and replace if you really want to. I mean, it should be a sort of, not a last resort, but you should have a good reason to edit them directly, I think. Otherwise you might cause a problem, but you can do it. It's an option.
Cool. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. This was fascinating.
Okay, thanks for having me. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Cheers.